Today I'm going to show you 3 of my all-time favorite exercises for getting really good results addressing what this typical asymmetrical pattern we see in humans is, which is the left AIC. Now, if you don't know what the left AIC pattern is, don't worry, I'm going to do a quick refresher, but I would strongly encourage you go and look at my video on this topic here, and I will link it down below in the description as well. The left AIC is the foundation of human asymmetry and what humans are naturally biased towards. The left AIC is the foundation of natural human asymmetry that we are all predisposed to. Now, this involves certain movement patterns and postures, but ultimately it is what people naturally are biased towards. And therefore, having some exercises that help restore movement and symmetry can be quite helpful, especially as symmetry gets more and more exaggerated over time. Because we have so much organ asymmetry and diaphragmatic asymmetry and even brain asymmetry, we are naturally lateralized, as we say, or shifted over to the right side of the body. On the hips, what we're seeing in particular is a right side that is more turned in and internally rotated, because if you were to shift over to one side, that leg would turn in, but this side of the pelvis is also turned in into internal rotation. On the left side, we have the opposite. We have the pelvis that's coming more forwardly tipped and turned out, which is more external rotation of this side of the pelvis. And the femur is also slid out into external rotation. Now, when we think about the upper body, the right shoulder is lower because the right hip comes higher, but you also see a more forward right shoulder, and this is actually an internally rotated shoulder. On the left side, we tend to see the scapula move closer to the spine, which means that it is more in an externally rotated position. All the while, the sternum on the front is also facing the right side. So on the left side, what we're going to be looking for is activation and recruitment of the left hamstring and also the left adductor inner thigh muscle and the left obliques. All of these muscles. On the left side, we're going to be looking for the left hamstring, the left obliques, and also the left inner thigh adductor muscle, because all 3 of these muscles help pull us over and turn us to the left side while they rotate the pelvis back. The hamstrings on the back side right here can pull the pelvis back because they attach on that sit bone right there. The adductor muscle can help turn the hip in and back on that side. And also the obliques help rotate the pelvis back as well and pull the rib cage underneath us, which is very important because in this left AIC pattern, we tend to be flared up on the left side and down on the right side ribs, which is why we tend to see more exaggerated left rib flare than right in most people. On the right side, we want to facilitate musculature that helps push us out of that side. So that would be muscles on the back side of the pelvis, like the glutes, the glute max and the gluteus medius in particular. And also the quad on the right side can help us create propulsion as well. So the 3 biggest keys here for educating our body how to properly shift out of one side and into the other. So this static posture is just a representation of our inability to move fluidly and dynamically and shift from right to left more effectively. Here's my favorite exercise that focuses on incorporating all of those things together for the left side. So to set up, we want to be 90-90, meaning that we have our knees bent at a 90-degree angle and also our hips bent at a 90-degree angle. And then we want to make sure that our feet are in line with our knees, that are in line with our hips here. And then we want to start with some sort of object in between our knees. A ball works really well here, or some sort of pillow works really well as long as you can press down on it and it can squeeze a little bit. So first, what I want you to do, Trevor, is reach for the wall with your left hand. Very good. Supporting his head with his right arm. And then give me a nice slight hip tuck right here. And then as you inhale, focus on keeping both feet flat, but focus on the left heel in particular as you pull this left knee back. And exhale, push down. Get all the air out as you push down. This is only about a 5 out of 10 push right here. It's not a max effort. He should feel these left obliques work as he finishes out that full exhale for about 5 to 8 seconds. As he feels these left obliques, he's going to inhale through his nose, shift back, keeping the tension in his left abs, and exhale, push down again. If he can't get the left knee back, he's going to have the conscious intention to do that, and that will still allow him to recruit the adductor and maintain the position that we're looking for. The most common mistake we see in this activity is as people are going through the reps here and this knee is back, there's a tendency for them as they inhale or exhale in the next rep, this knee comes forward. Do not let that happen, because if you do, you're going to lose the internal rotation on the left hip and also that recruitment of the adductor and potentially the oblique as well. So make sure you're at least keeping the knee in the same place, pulling it back, and trying to pull it back just a millimeter more if you can, so long as there's no cramping in your hip or anything feeling off. All we want you to feel is the adductor and the oblique, potentially a little bit of glute med on this outside hip here. But if you're feeling anything restrictive or uncomfortable, back off a little bit, shake it out, and then only pull back a little bit. And the last thing that we see is that, I forget what it was last thing.
Ball position?
Oh yeah. The last thing that we see is that the ball position or the pillow, whatever you're using, the placement of it does matter. If it's too far forward here, you're not going to be able to leverage that pull back. We want this thing to be at least in sort of the first third of your leg right here. We don't want it to be too far back, but it should be enough to where you can really leverage a nice pull. And here's my favorite exercise for the right side, but keep in mind, we really want to make sure that while we push out of that right side, we're able to get that weight into the left side. So we're going to have a little bit of side bending action going on here. Now, I recommend doing this barefoot, so that way you get the best leverage against the wall. But there's a couple of things we need to optimize our setup. We're going to have a yoga block or just something, a couple of books could work, stacked underneath the feet. That's going to allow us to best get the foot contacts we need for this exercise. We have a 90-degree bend at both our knees and our hips, so a right angle at both. And we have a very, very light band around the top of the knees. You don't want to use a heavy band. It will not help you. You want something that's pretty light or very light according to the band resistance. And we also have a towel roll underneath the side that's facing the ground. So this will be his left side in this instance right here. And the towel roll is not underneath the hip, but underneath the waist, the lowest ribs right there. And some sort of pillow that will allow you to keep your head nice and neutral and isn't side bending you to one side or the other or shoving your head forward or backward. So everything is in line right here. So to initiate this exercise, we need to first get our rib cage in a good position. So Jacob's just going to take a nice full exhale through his mouth. Sigh the air out for about 5 seconds. He's going to feel his rib cage come down. Good. Now, he wants to feel the foot contacts on the wall of his right first metatarsal head and inner heel. That's going to allow him to connect his glute working with his foot. And we want to make sure we're genuinely using our glutes. So the way that we do that is maintaining that ribs down position. He's going to reach this top hip for the wall away from him. So that's almost going to elongate the top side of him right here and crunch the bottom side out. It's almost like he's doing a little side crunch to that bottom side there. So he should feel that without flaring his rib cage, of course. Okay, so to recap so far, we've got the foot contacts on the right side. Left foot is also flat. We have the ribs down, and we have this hip reaching for the wall. He's going to slide his right knee ahead of his left knee, or the top knee ahead of the bottom knee, without ever losing that inner heel or first met head contact. And then he's going to slightly raise his knee towards the ceiling without ever losing those right foot contacts. So he never wants to roll the outside of his foot. He wants to make sure that he's maintaining those. So if that's as high as you can get, that's totally cool. You just want to make sure you're going forward first and then up. And if you do it right, you should feel your lower butt cheek on this side, this top side here, working really well. So Jacob is going to breathe in through his nose, out through his mouth, nice and relaxed. Check in with yourself. Is your neck activated? Is your low back activated? If it is, relax, because all you want to feel is this lower right glute working, this lower glute on the top side working, and maybe some downside side abs right there. So that'd be his left side abs. By far the biggest mistake here is people are going to want to use their top side ab wall to help them lift that knee up. So they're going to crunch here to get that. The reason why we have this reaching away is so that way we don't do that. So it's important that we keep our rib cage down, but we still have this intention to reach away. It may help you to take this side, this downside elbow, and push it into the floor to help you get a little bit of those downside side ups, but ultimately just keep the intention to keep all this relaxed in this ab wall while reaching this towards the wall. And that'll allow you to still feel that glute working really well. The other common mistake we see is the setup. So people will start too far away like this, and now they're kind of sliding their leg like this, and it just doesn't work at all. So we want to make sure that we're forward folded enough. We want to have at least a 90-degree angle right here. If not, maybe just a tiny bit less than that, to optimize our ability to push our foot arch into the wall and use it with our glute. And finally, the last thing to keep in mind is just don't extend your low back. Don't let your ribs flare at all. If you're maintaining the intention to keep your rib cage down, then you'll optimize your ability to use your glute max during this. So to recap, what we have is a little bit of left side abs, lower glute max on the top side, and we have our rib cage down. The rest of our body, our neck, our low back, our left foot is still on the wall but relaxed. If you're struggling to find your glute max on that top side, it may help you to take just a half step forward with this top foot right here. So you don't want to go further than that because that's going to limit your ability to push your knee forward, but just get your toes of this downside in line with maybe just the ball of your foot right here or a little bit beyond that. And that's going to allow you to find that glute max better. Now, depending on how much knowledge you have of this pattern coming into this video, you may have seen exercises like this before, but I commonly see them not executed very well, which is partly why I wanted to make this video, because there are some specific cues I really want you to hone in on in order to get the most out of these exercises. So please pay attention and go slow. And focus on the intention. I find that that makes such a big difference in how people either get successful or unsuccessful outcomes from these exercises. If you're just treating it like any other regular exercise, you're not going to be getting that much of it. But remember how, when we're trying to shift left, we want that heel reference. We want to educate. I keep saying that word for a reason. How we can get back on that left heel with that musculature. On the right side, pushing. So can we create that neurological sensory awareness experience? Think about it like that rather than just, okay, I'm gonna feel some muscles and do some stuff. If you can shift your perspective and go slow and relax, you're gonna have a lot better success with these exercises. Now, my favorite all-time exercise for this pattern would be the following exercise I'm about to show you. However, it's very important to know that not everyone can do this on day one. They need to build up to it by doing other exercises first. What we're gonna do is first make sure we can set up optimally, because that's the biggest part of this, honestly. This is a really effective technique, but if we aren't set up right, then we're not gonna be successful. So we gotta make sure that we have a couple of key things in place here. The first is that we have a pillow underneath our head, and it should be big enough to where we're very slightly side bent up towards the ceiling. So we have a little bit of a curvature in the neck right there. Not much at all, maybe just 5–10 degrees. It's not gonna feel like much to you, but that's an important part of what we're trying to accomplish, integrating the whole body from head to toe. We also have a little towel roll underneath the lowest ribs on the down side there. That's going to serve as a reference for you to use your abs effectively later in the exercise. It doesn't need to be much, just a little bit underneath the lowest ribs, so that way the hip on the bottom side can still be on the floor. A common setup mistake we will see with this is people will oftentimes have that bottom side arm up there and shrugged, whereas if we're gonna get a little bit of separation right here and we want to use our left abs like we will in this exercise, then we want to have that left shoulder tucked under us a little bit, at minimum stacked with that top shoulder right there. We also have a bench or some object. It doesn't matter really what it is, as long as it's keeping you in a position of slight abduction, meaning that your foot is ever so slightly higher than your hip. Now, you could use a slightly higher or lower surface depending on how much abduction you have in your hip. And you can measure that separately on your own, or we may do it for you. But the point is that you need to have a straight line from your heel to your hip, to your shoulder, to your head. Now, for most people, because you're in a hip extended position, it's gonna feel like your leg is a little bit behind you, but in reality, it is actually just in line with your body. Now, this left side, or the down side, whatever side you're doing it on, is gonna be, if this was a perfect 90-degree angle right here from his hip, he will have slightly less than that. And the important part of this downside is that we have some sort of external reference or object for the foot to be against something. So we have this step right here, it's up against the wall, so that way when Trevor presses his heel into it, he can feel a little bit of grounding and foot reference there. It's not 100% necessary if you don't have any way you can set it up, but it does really help quite a bit. So if you can set it up, awesome. If not, then there might be a way you can do it without that aspect. So what we're gonna do to start is first make sure we have that straight line from the right heel or top heel to the head. Now Trevor's gonna just get a nice gentle exhale through his mouth, fully, full, maybe 5 to 6 second exhale. He's gonna feel his rib cage just come down. That's gonna stack his ribs over his hips. Now what he's gonna do is just very gently roll the right hip forward, so that way now everything is aligned still, but this right hip is square and parallel with the wall ahead of him. So he's not rolled out, but not so far to where it's not parallel anymore, just right about there. As he does that, he should feel a tiny bit of his right outside hip, like his glute med engage. And then we're going to further facilitate that by getting Trevor to reach this right leg away from him. And that's going to have him also get the inside edge of his foot pushed away, which is E version of the foot. So Trevor, if we can show them one more time. This action right here is what you're looking for. Okay, to summarize, we have a straight line from the heel to the hip to the shoulder to the head. At this point, all we should really feel is the right outside hip and potentially a little bit of side abs as well. Because if you notice, Trevor, you can come back to the starting position right here. As Trevor reaches that right leg away from him, he should be able to feel a little mouse tunnel underneath these lowest left ribs right here. And if he needs to push his top hand into the ground a little bit, that's okay. And that should help him find a little bit of left obliques or downside obliques. And this is the first step of the exercise. All you need to be able to do is maintain that straight line and feel your downside side abs with your top side glute med or side of the butt cheek. And if you can do that, great. Just sit here for a couple of breaths. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, making sure you're keeping heel contact on this object right here with your downside foot. The most common mistake in this version of the exercise is that as people roll that top hip slightly forward and reach this leg away, they're gonna move through their low back and extend their low back. Remember, we are in hip extension, but we don't want the back to arch. So if this is you, I'd strongly recommend further emphasizing that full exhale at the beginning and feeling your ribs come down and holding that as you roll that hip over very subtly and slightly and then reaching that leg away from you. Doing that should really limit how much movement you have through your low back. Finally, the thing to watch out for is using this top right leg to push down into that bench and lift your hip off for whatever reason. You should feel your right outside hip, not your right inner thigh. If you're feeling any right groin, that's not good, and that indicates you're pushing down. So you may need to use a lower object here, or just emphasize more of this arch reaching away from you. Okay, now I know that was a lot. We totally get that, but I want to give you the key points to think about, and that is straight line from here to here to here to here, rolling that top hip slightly forward and keeping the rib cage down. If you can do that, you're gonna have some success. It's just really important that you feel only your downside side abs and your top side glute med area. If you're doing that, you're doing great. And as long as your neck and low back are relaxed, those are the key points. As a progression from this, everything will stay the exact same. But the only thing we're gonna do is keeping heel contact on that downside right there. We're gonna focus on just ever so slightly having the intention to lift this bottom side knee off of the ground. The hip stays on the ground, but just 1 millimeter of a lift of that bottom side knee is gonna really kick on your inner groin adductor muscle on, in this case, the left side, but he should not lose his downside side abs or that top side glute med area. If he does, he's probably trying too hard to lift that knee up. Some people won't even be able to lift the knee up, but the intention to lift the knee is all they need to feel that inner thigh adductor muscle engaged. Just remember, don't lose that heel. Now, it's really important you don't try to do too much with this exercise because it is so easy to try to push yourself beyond the limits of what you have, and it's not gonna help you. You really gotta make sure that you're doing it only as well as you can for as long as you can. So for example, just check in with yourself. Are you feeling the things that I'm coaching in the exercise? Are you feeling your neck engaged, your low back engaged? Those are the two places people will feel tension when things aren't going well. So make sure, like, hey, if you can only do any of these exercises for only 3 breaths per set perfectly, then great, just do that. Don't try to add more breaths or time to these exercises if you're not doing them well. It is a waste of time to do that if you're kicking on other things. So just do what you can and eventually build up to doing more and more breaths per set of these exercises. Now keep in mind with any of these exercises, like I touched on earlier, it's very easy to compensate and feel something you probably shouldn't feel, or lose something you probably should feel. The two most common problems I see with these exercises is A, people try way too hard. These are not strength exercises. These are not exercises you want to feel the biggest contraction possible on. If you're doing that, you don't have the right intention. You're probably trying to force yourself into a position rather than educate your body. And hey, this is a safe position for me to be in. This is nice. This might be more efficient than what I was doing before. Keep that perspective shift. Relax. 3 out of 10 effort max is all you're really looking for here. It doesn't take much. And also, people will tend to get tired or they tend to lose focus and then their neck or low back kicks on. So check in with yourself. Am I relaxed and is my low back and neck chill? If you're looking for a deeper dive on more asymmetrical posture concepts, check out my lateral pelvic tilt video. And this will also help explain to people that don't fully fit this left AIC pattern what's going on and how they've compensated out of it. For maximum efficiency, I'd recommend doing these exercises 2 sets in the morning, 2 sets at night, or maybe even 3 each, for about 5 to 6 slow breath cycles per set. And do them in the order that I present them in this video. And if you do them well, you should start to see good things happen, not only immediately, but progressively more and more over a period of weeks.